Please, if you would, describe the technical assistance that the United States is prepared to offer the Congolese authorities to facilitate their conducting a transparent and thorough review of the election process, and what steps can be taken by CENI and by other Congolese institutions to improve the credibility of both the outcomes and the process and create stronger institutions, both as the next steps of the tabulation of the National Assembly elections are moving forward and in advance of future elections.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that question, that excellent question. First, let me say that we pushed very hard for CENI to release all of the numbers that are currently being reviewed, contested, and disputed. I spoke with the chairman of the CENI, Pastor Malunda, and encouraged him not just to release the aggregate totals, but to release all of the numbers from the 63,478 polling stations across the country, as well as the 169 compilation centers. It was our nudging and pushing that resulted in all of these numbers coming out. We have said to the authorities, in response to your question, Mr. Chairman, that we are prepared to help come up with resources to fund a technical assessment of the elections. We are prepared to look for resources in conjunction with others to have groups such as IFES, the Carter Center, and other respectable and internationally acknowledged election organizations go into an in-depth audit of exactly what occurred. This would permit an examination of the logistical, the administrative, and the management processes that are part of the election, as well as any irregularities that would also be discovered in such an audit. We think that this is important to do in order to develop an understanding of what went wrong in the loss of ballots and votes by individuals. But most importantly, it would provide a foundation on which to improve the next set of elections for that country. We all know that this is not a one-only process. Our desire is to see better elections in the future. The only way that can happen is to be able to identify the reasons why this election did not live up to the expectations of the people of the Congo, as well as many in the international community who support democracy. So it would be an audit. We would not attempt to do it with our own individual resources, but would go out and contract groups that are election experts to do this, to provide a foundation to find out why, what went wrong, and to provide a basis and a roadmap for improvements as we move ahead.
Let me ask a next question, if I might, about post-election violence, given how quickly developments may unfold in the DRC, both the Supreme Court ruling, the scheduled inauguration. How quickly can the international community, the UN, the AU, SADC, other partners of ours, get engaged with the United States, get engaged with the Congolese government, and conduct this audit? And what impact might this have on post-election violence? And what do you think the international community and the United States can and should do to minimize the risks of widespread violence?
Mr. Chairman, we have been sending a very loud and clear signal to all of the candidates to not engage in violence. We have said repeatedly that violence has no part in the electoral process or in democracy. We have encouraged them to resolve any differences that they have had or might have with the process through legal means. We have reached out to a number of key leaders around the region to ask them to reinforce this message as well. I myself spoke this past weekend to the chairman of the African Union and encouraged him to convey the same message to officials there. I think that with respect to the issue of violence, all violence is unacceptable and should not be tolerated. But the reality thus far, Mr. Chairman, is that there is significantly less violence following this election so far than there was after the second round of the 2006 election, in which President Kabila beat his closest rival, Mr. Bemba. Following the elections in 2006, there were armed battles in the streets of Kinshasa and in a number of other major towns between rival armies of the two contending candidates. That had to be eventually put down over several weeks by the Congolese military, supported by the UN. I am not saying that the prospect for violence does not exist going forward, but thus far we have not seen anywhere near the level of violence that we saw in 2006. We continue to encourage all candidates to act responsibly. We've encouraged neighboring state leaders to enforce that message as well, and we will continue to do so.
Thank you, Ambassador. Senator Essington.
Secretary Carson, when when the chairman and I were in Nigeria, we had an interesting, if I remember correctly, 2.5-hour meeting with Mr. Yeager, who's the head of the election commission that was put together in Nigeria to conduct the election that was so successful. And one of the things that they used, which was impressive to both of us, is cell technology to communicate from the polling place to Lagos, or I guess was it Lagos or was it Abuja? What the count was at the polling place. So if it got to Abuja and it was different, they had some idea there was some fooling around, and evidently it was the key cog in having transparency and accountability in the vote processes. I know we've talked about, you used the term improved tabulation process. That was an improved tabulation process in Nigeria. Could we recommend that, or ask the Nigerian government if they would invite Mr. Yeager in to consult with them on reforms like that could help have more transparent and fair elections?
Senator Isaacson, the answer is yes, and I hope that as we go out and try to put together a effort to have a technical assessment made, that those who might win the contract to do this would in fact invite in people like the Nigerian election commissioner. I think he did an extraordinarily good job also in very difficult circumstances. You're absolutely right about the importance of cell phone communication there, where people were able to send their results in telephonically so that there was a way to double and triple track the numbers that were being received at the central compilation centers. But something else was also there that was missing from the DRC process, which I think is useful in many elections across Africa, and that is a parallel vote count, in which there is a system put in place to have a very good, legitimate counting and tabulation that runs parallel to that of the governments or the electoral commission. So that's an important thing. One of the other things I might add too is that there were enormous logistical and technical complications with this election, but this election also took place in the worst time of the year for the DRC, right in the middle of their rainy season, and that also helped to add complications on top of very serious additional shortcomings which have already been mentioned.
In your testimony, you talked about a lack of functioning authority in a good area of the DRC. And as I understand it, there are places in the DRC that are really under good control and have good functioning authority, but there are some pockets that are pretty lawless, ungoverned, and hard to reach. In the election tabulations, was there any correlation between the problems with the election as to those that didn't have functioning authority and those that did?
I haven't been able to make that kind of assessment myself, but I do know that it was, in fact, very difficult to carry out the elections in the South Kivu area, which is an area where armed groups continue to operate quite widely. But I know that the problems that were experienced in this election were widespread. They occurred in Kinshasa, they occurred in Katanga, they occurred in Equator, so I'm not able to say whether they were better or worse in places where government authority was or was not effective.
Were any of the 100 advisors that the President sent to Uganda positioned also in the DRC?
At this point, there are only several there in the DRC, and they are located up in the far northeastern part of the country.
And that's part of the effort to go after the Lord's Resistance Army?
It is indeed. As we've indicated, the President authorized a mission of approximately 100 military advisors who will help provide information and better training for the forces in the region to effectively track down the remnants of Kony's organization and Kony himself. We hope that over time that these advisors will be located in Uganda, in parts of the northeastern corner of the DRC, as well as the CAR, and in South Sudan.
Based on my mail, and based on being a member of the Vietnam generation, you know, I get a lot of there's a lot of concern about that loaning those advisors, because there's kind of an unknown mission in the public. And so I would encourage you and Secretary Clinton, in whatever way is appropriate given security, national security, and also the security of those personnel, to have a periodic reporting back to us over the progress of what they're doing at their stated mission, and also what their rules of engagement are, because quite frankly, most of us between 65 and 70 remember what happened in the 1960s with a handful of advisors that actually President Eisenhower sent into Southeast Asia that later became a major deployment. I'm not suggesting that's either the intent or possible, but I think the transparency that people look for in elections, I think they're also going to be looking for in terms of this assignment of personnel. And I would appreciate it to the extent you can, and it meets our national security and the interest of those advisors, that we be periodically advised of their progress, the rules of engagement they operate under, and their mission. Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Yes, sir. I actually agree, and I think there's probably no reason, Senator Isaacson, that we cannot in fact do this. And I will make sure when I go back to the building that we have no problems with doing so, but I have no problem with giving you a periodic update. If I don't do it, I will make sure that my colleagues over in the Department of Defense are aware of this request and transmit it for them to make sure that it happens. But I think that's certainly a suggestion that we can follow through on.
I think my suggestion is not just for myself and Senator Coons, but we could be the conduit to ensure that the Senate understands that issue, because if it were to bubble up, a lack of knowledge can be a real threat to the mission. So I haven't talked to the chairman about this, but I'd be happy to be a part of a conduit to periodically give that report to the members of the Senate.
Absolutely. Okay.
Follow up, if I might, on that same line of questioning. During the run-up to the elections, the idea of having Ugandan troops on DRC soil pursuing the LRA was increasingly controversial. Now the elections have passed. Is there any confidence in your part that there will be improved collaboration between the DRC, Uganda, and other regional players in pursuing CONI and the LRA? And what do you see as the scale of the scope and the nature of the ongoing threat that the LRA poses to civilians in the DRC and the region?
The LRA continues to pose a serious threat to civilians in a wide area extending from the northeastern part of the Congo into the Central African Republic and all the way to the South Sudan border. They continue to kidnap young men for conscription into their ranks and women to be sex slaves and porters. We believe that the total strength of the LRA probably does not exceed any more than approximately 250 individuals, but these 250 individuals are known to be killers and to be extraordinarily ruthless. They are dispersed in a number of groups, fanning out over a very, very large and heavily treed and forested area. So they do continue to be a threat in the area. And we think that it is important to continue to help the countries in the region go after them. The DRC government did ask for a reduction in the number of Ugandans on their soil in the run-up to the elections. We hope that following the conclusion of these elections that we will see a return to the stepped-up cooperation that has led to the degrading of the LRA over the last year and a half. I note that the DRC has committed one battalion, the 391st Battalion, to operations in the Northeast in the Garamba Forest. It is a battalion of soldiers trained by DOD and AFRICOM. They remain very much engaged in the search and the fight against the LRA. They are using information that is shared among Uganda, the DRC, and the United States. And that information sharing between the countries has not ceased. And we know that those who are sharing this information from both armies in the DRC and Uganda work together across the border. What's the
likely role of the new special advisor? First, let me commend the administration for appointing Ambassador Walkley as the special advisor for DRC and Great Lakes region. Help us understand, if you would, how he's going to focus and elevate U.S. policy in the region around LRA, around conflict minerals, around improving governance and resolving ongoing disputes in the region. What will his role be?
Well, first of all, we're extremely pleased with the presence of and selection of Ambassador Walkley. He is an enormously experienced diplomat, having served a great deal in Francophone Africa as ambassador to Gabon, ambassador to Guinea-Conakry, and about a decade and a half ago, as deputy chief of mission in Kinshasa. He was most recently our consul general and charge d'affaires in Juba. He is a highly skilled diplomat. We hope that Ambassador Walkley's appointment will signal to all who are concerned about the DRC that the United States remains serious and deeply interested in the issues of the Great Lakes region and the DRC in particular. We hope that Ambassador Walkley will be able to effectively strengthen a coordination of our policy in Washington within the interagency and within the State Department among the various offices that are responsible and have an interest in Great Lakes issues. We also hope that he will be able to work with the governments in the region to promote greater security, collaboration, and information sharing, help them work together on strengthening common economic ties that are important across the border, help them to address the issues of conflict minerals and the movement of conflict minerals illegally across one border into another state for export. And we hope that he will be our conduit and liaison with the international community and those in the international community who are also concerned about issues in the Great Lakes. So we see essentially a three-part role for him in his obligations for us.
Thank you. Senator Isaacs?
I don't really have another question. I just want to thank Secretary Carson for his active engagement in the entire continent and for his keeping Senator Coons and I so well informed. I think the successes of the last year have been quite remarkable. If you look at the comprehensive peace agreement in the Sudan and the potential for what's happening there, the positive potential there, and some of the other things that have happened in large measure have been because of your diplomacy and your engagement, and I personally acknowledge that and appreciate it very much.
Senator, thank you very much, and thank you for your support as well, and the chairman's support is in addition. I think that both of you have been strong supporters of strengthening our engagement and with Africa and developing a positive and strong relationship with the continent.
Let me, if I might, just ask one or two more questions. I'd understood Senator Durbin was making his best efforts to join us and now may have been unavoidably detained, so I'm going to leave the record at the end of this hearing open for longer than usual. I believe he may have some questions about conflict minerals or the LRA or other topics that would be of interest. I also wanted to just add a question about leaders like President Kabila who have made constitutional changes right before elections and the implications of such actions in the democratic process. I've heard from a number of constituents real concern about Cameroon. President Biya, who modified the Cameroonian constitution to run for a sixth term and is now beginning his fourth decade in office after their recent elections. What more can the United States and the international community do to ensure in Cameroon that the political opposition is not silenced and to discourage other leaders in the region, including, for example, as we spoke about the other day, President Awad in Senegal, from forcing similar constitutional challenges or extending their terms of office beyond what might be positive and reasonable in the interest of their people in the democratic process?
Mr. Chairman, very good question. The decision by the President and the government of Cameroon to end term limitations was deeply, deeply unfortunate. I think that the elimination of terms helps to fuel some of the difficulties that arise when leaders have an opportunity to extend themselves in office indefinitely. We are clearly opposed to the extension, or we are clearly opposed to the reduction of an elimination of term limits. We have voiced our concern about this issue to President Paul Biya. I hope that he and others in his government will see the value of reinstating term limits. I think that it helps to create an opportunity for political mobility by the most senior political officials in any country. But the elimination of term limits in the Cameroon, as around other parts of Africa, is regrettable.
My last question, the Democratic Republic of the Congo is at the bottom in terms of the human index. The international community's contributed $2 billion. We are, as you mentioned, the single largest donor. Given the outcome of these elections so far, given the very real challenges facing the DRC going forward, what aspects of our assistance and of international engagement do you think have the best prospects for improving human conditions, improving governance, making the DRC a more a just and a positive place for its residents in the years ahead? What can we be doing to improve governance that will have a lasting impact?
Well, we are working to improve the judicial system. We are working with civil society organizations. We are working with the legislature. We have to continue to do all of these things. We are working with civil society to fight corruption. We're working to improve the capacity of the judicial system as well. These are things that do take an enormous amount of time. But I would like to say that a lot of our resources going into the Democratic Republic of the Congo are there to address human needs, sexual and gender-based violence, ending the cycle of impunity that has led to enormous human rights violations against women and others across the country, improving in health care as well. So it's across a wide area that we're working.
Well, thank you. I'd like to offer our sincere appreciation, Ambassador Carson, for your leadership. And we'd like to now move to our second panel today, if we could. Thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Assistant